We are about to go live. We are live. This is our weekly mental wellness check-in, led by our young people. My name is Julia Mejia. I'm an at-large city councilor. Every Thursday, we gather with groups of young people, and oftentimes we bring adults and educators into the space to really have organic conversations about what is on the hearts and minds of the young people in the city of Boston. And today's conversation was inspired by one of our panelists to talk about all things of what it's like to be graduating under these circumstances. I'll just say really quick before passing it on to my one and only hostess with the mostest, Naesoj, is that I am a first generation high schooler. I was the first in my family to graduate high school and college, and I was almost 20 by the time I made it out. And so walking across that stage for me was an incredible moment of joy, and also hard work. And so I could only imagine what it's like for those who have worked just as hard to not be able to walk across that stage. So today we're going to get on what the impact of that has on our social and emotional well-being. But without any further ado, I'm going to kick it over to the one and only Naesoj.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us again for another Thursday for our mental health check-in with young people. This week is very special because, like the counselor said, we have a bunch of first-generation students. So yes, again, I'm Naesoj Ware, the youth liaison for Julia Mejia, here with our other youth liaison, Alondra Bobadilla, and our co-host, Dr. Gayl. So I'll pass it over to you, Dr. Gayl.
Hi, good evening. Welcome back to another week of mental wellness for our youth. And we're happy to have you here. I too, I'm a first generation graduate, actually all the way through, except for high school, but all the way through from college up until my final terminal degree. I was the first in my family to ever finish college. And so I'm considered a first generation graduate too as well. So I know the challenges of having to hold that title, so to speak. So again, thank you for being here. And again, I am supportive to Naesoj, and I'm going to turn it right back over to her.
Okay, hi everybody. So we're going to go around and have everybody introduce themselves. Of course, your neighborhood, what school you go to. I'm gonna let Alondra do introductions, and yeah.
Hi guys. So as Naesoj said, can you guys hear me? Just making sure. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Sometimes my audio goes off, but my name is Alondra. I'm also Julia Mejia's other youth liaison, as well as Boston's Youth Poet Laureate. I'm really excited to be here with you guys today. And I guess we will pass it over to, we'll start with one of the youth, Leonnardo.
Yeah. So my name is Leonnardo. I'm a high school senior at the Margarita Muniz Academy, and I live in Dorchester.
Great. And I guess we will go off with Daniela.
Yes, hi. My name is Daniela Lopez Garcia. I'm from Margarita Muniz Academy, and I am from East Boston.
It's nice to meet you. And now we have Katerine.
Yeah, my name is Katerine, and I'm a graduate from Margarita Muniz Academy, and I live in Randolph.
Meet you. Moving on, I think, to Shalika.
Oh, my name is Shalika. I go to McCormick. I'm in 8th grade, and I live in Dorchester, Up Eames Corner.
All right, so now moving on to our adult panelists, and we will start off with Antonio.
Hi, everyone. My name is Antonio Arbello. I'm an assistant principal at the Margarita Muñiz, well represented. I'm also a graduate from West Roxbury High School. I will not share the year. And currently, I live in West Roxbury.
All right, thank you. And now we have Neema.
Hi, everybody. My name is Neema Avashia. I'm an 8th grade civics teacher at the McCormick Middle School in Dorchester, and I live in Jamaica Plain.
Great. And now we have Yhinny.
Hi, everybody. My name is Yhinny Matos, and I'm the Youth Workforce Manager for Madison Park Development Corporation, and I'm also a parent of a graduating senior at the Margarita Muñiz Academy. His name is Yisam, if anybody knows him, Tiger. I'm his mom. Unfortunately, I can't have him here because of conflict of interest, and but we have some great young people from MMA that volunteered to be on the show. So thank you so much to the young people, the seniors that are on today.
All right, so we will kick it off with our first question, starting off with our young people. How you guys basically are feeling right now during this time, and then moving forward with our teachers, same question. How it feels basically to go through this experience with your students no longer being in school, and knowing that they will not be graduating at this time or having a normal celebration at this time. And again, we'll start off with the young people, and any one of you can begin, and then when the young people are done, we can move on to the teachers.
You may want to call on somebody if nobody wants to. I would just start calling. Call them out, Alondra.
Okay, we'll start off with Daniela then. How about that?
Okay. So my experience this this term has been really stressful. Not really academic wise, but like just what's going on around the world is really stressful, especially since my sister is a frontline worker. I have to make sure I keep her safe, and even though she's working at home because she's an interpreter, it's very important to have her well because she is very important in the East Boston community. But it's also really hard because I'm the last of my mother's children, so not being able to walk across that stage and giving her, that celebration, it's been really hard.
I can only imagine what that must be like, and I appreciate you sharing that. That's intense. Is there anyone else that wants to go after, or should I call someone else's name? Silence. Okay. Katerine?
Yeah, well, my experience of this pandemic is really impactful because my mom is the only one, I wasn't working when the pandemic started. So my mom was the only one working. My dad basically lost his job. And practically he's not working that much as he used to. But we still have bills to pay. And my mom is the only person who's working. But then I started to work. I got a job, and that was a relief because my mom being the only one person to basically support us financially was very hard. But now I'm very happy that I'm working right now, and that even though this pandemic has been really difficult, I'm happy to support my mother, and I'm happy to also receive support from teachers from my school. And even though I'm not going to be able to graduate as the tradition is, I feel very proud that we still managed to break this obstacle, and we're still here. And grateful to basically have all the support from my family and the school staff to with all this process.
I think Alondra's frozen, but I don't know. Have we heard from Leonnardo?
I'll go. For me, I'll talk about my personal experience. When schools first closed, I felt like I lost like structure and routine from going to school and things like that. And when the schools closed, there was just like a whole bunch of assignments to do at first. And at first, it felt like fun because it felt like a little vacation. But then after, I noticed that I got like distracted and became bored and started to fall behind. And then also for like a lot of students, I know school wasn't just about the academics, but it was also about like the social interactions. And when schools slowly started to close, those social interactions started to come to an end. And I think the thing that stressed me out the most was worrying about graduating and being able to qualify and prepare for like our journey after high school. And like during this time, I lost like motivation. But if it weren't for like my school faculty that like never forgot to like check up on me and see how my family was, I don't think I would have been able to like pick myself up from the work. And it kind of like sucks that like COVID took away some of like the traditional experiences like prom and graduation, but it's also an experience itself to talk about with like future generations. Graduating and being able.
Thank you so much, Leonnardo. And that's a great point about being able to talk about this with future generations. I don't know if Alondra wants to pick it back up.
I disappeared. I don't know how that happened. Where were we at? Oh my gosh, I just remember.
So I'm sure Shalika, is that how you
say
it?
Shalika.
Yeah. Have you spoken yet?
Okay.
We're gonna have you go.
Okay. I'm feeling very frustrated about it and very like, I don't know the word for it, but it's just kind of confusing because I'm not used to doing online work, and it's kind of hard sometimes to keep up because I also have to babysit because my mom still goes to work because she still needs to provide for me and my family. So like I have a lot on my hand right now, so I'm balancing schoolwork and taking care of my siblings. As you can hear, they're running in the back right now. But how I feel knowing I won't graduate normally is kind of sad because ever since I was in 6th grade, like I would always see like my brother, he would like graduate. He graduated high school when I was in 6th grade, and I saw him walk across the stage, and I was like, wow, that would really happen to me one day. And I was like, you know what, let me just use 8th grade and like wait for high school. So I was really looking forward to it. And then it's like this whole pandemic happened, and it's like all that hard work that I've done this year, I won't get noticed for it.
Thank you so much, Lika. I understand where you're coming from when you say you feel like you're not getting noticed for all the hard work, but trust me, I know everybody on this call and a lot more people are acknowledging all the work that all of our seniors at MMA and every other Boston public school and every school in general has been doing. So I kind of want to ask Yhinny, I know you're a mom, how are you feeling being a parent during this pandemic and not being able to see your child walk across the stage like you thought you would have been able to?
I mean, it's pretty devastating, to be honest, just because I did plan a big party for him that was going to happen at his aviation school, actually. I was supposed to be on Sunday. It was also his birthday. His birthday was so close to graduating that I decided to do 3 parties in one, the send off to college, the birthday, and then the graduation party all in one. But unfortunately, that had to be kind of taken away. But definitely I have to put safety first, the safety of my child, the safety of my family is definitely something that supersedes any celebration. However, I'm happy that MMA is doing something very special. There's another organization doing a motorcade, so they're gonna set, everybody dresses up, everybody kind of decorates their cars, and they're gonna go through the different high schools and just do a little celebration that way. So it was truly devastating in the beginning, knowing that these and especially the prom. I think MMA's prom was supposed to be this Saturday, right? Or Friday or tonight? It was tonight. Was supposed to be tonight, and not being able to see my son in graduate and not being able to send him off to prom and stuff like that. But we're finding alternative ways, and I'm happy that MMA is very conscious of that. And I actually have multiple conversations with Dr. Vazquez about ideas. So we're marching on. Not on the stage, but we're marching on.
Can I say something before we move on to the next point? And I think some of the young people talked about juggling home life and also work. And on top of all of those things, you're also just dealing with just everyday things that are happening at home. And I'm just curious, what, if any, support you've been able to find outside of school. And don't make me pick you, because I will. Let me see who I'm going to. I'm gonna go to Katerine.
Outside of school.
Yeah. Who have been some of the people who you can, who, like, how are you finding support around all of this? Did you go on mute? Did you hide from me? Where you at?
Well, I'm at job. One of my coworkers. Here. Can you hear me?
A little bit. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can. Yep.
Okay. So yeah, at my job, I have this coworker who basically was connecting me with more people. Like for instance, like what are some of the resources that we can have during this pandemic. And since my mother is then since my dad is not working, that means that, like, I also have a little brother, but basically like needs financial support to go through this pandemic. So yeah, I had my manager, basically, like, I talked to him about, like, because basically, like, he asked me, like, oh, how I was doing with all of this, and like how's my family. And then, like, he was basically finding me resources to basically so that, like, things that, like, I can look for, so like I can tell my mom, or like what are the things that she can do for to go through this pandemic. My sister, who's a sophomore in high school, she basically received a EBT pandemic, I don't know the name, but it's a EBT pandemic resource, which is basically like money to basically, like, to buy food. And which is something good, because, you know, as I said before, my mom is the only one working, my dad is not working, and like that's like a relief for us. And, you know, like, I also, like, no, also mentally, like, I have friends who, like, I've been talking to, like, during this pandemic, and that has helped me, like, to basically feel better, and, like, to not stress out, and to continue with my life. Because sometimes, like, being at home or being isolated can be difficult, and, you know, sometimes you need, like, people to talk to, even though, like, it's not, like, personally, through phone. It can be like something like a relief, or something like a support, like, from far away. Even though from far away, it makes a difference.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I will say, and then this will be the last thing I say, I promise, and then I'm going to move on, is that when I was in high school, there was a point in time where I worked 3 jobs during the summer. I worked at a shoe store, I worked at McDonald's, and I worked at a hospital, because you know, my mom was undocumented, and then, you know, when she was able to work, she didn't finish 3rd grade, even beyond that, so she was undereducated, and so I had to work a little bit harder just to help put food on the table. And I know that this pandemic is just making it a lot harder for our kids, for our young people who are already struggling, and now we end up sometimes having to take on more responsibility. So I just want you to know that these stories that I hear during these sessions, I carry them in my heart, and they inform every single thing that I fight for. And just know that people tune in and they get inspired by what they hear, and motivated to act. And so I really do appreciate you all being so open and honest about, you know, what's happening. I just want to say thank you. Thank you.
I agree. Thank you so much, Counselor, for that. I think our next question would kind of just be like, what is, for Antonio and Neema, how has it been seeing, like, your students not being able to like experience a traditional like a graduation. If either, yeah.
I can go. I mean, I think something I've been thinking about a lot is grief. There's a lot of grief in the air right now. That's like collective grief around like for all of us, like our whole way of living has been turned upside down. And then you can have also on top of that, the grief of like, if you have a family member who has been struck ill or passed away because of COVID. We also have had a shocking amount of violence in the last couple months, especially in the neighborhood where I live, but also in the neighborhoods where a lot of you live. There's been a ton of violence. And so that's like another layer of grief, right? And so we're all holding a lot of grief, and the things that I think help us as human beings to like process grief and hold grief are being able to be together and like being in community and sharing experiences. And so one of the things that makes this really hard is that we're in a situation where a lot of people are hurting and we don't have good ways to be together. And graduation is like one of those ways that you're together. And, you know, we've been talking at our school about trying to think about like, could we do a drive-through graduation? Could we do a drive-in graduation? Are we going to drive to the houses of all the 130 students and give them something that we don't know what is yet because we're not sure diplomas are going to be printed in time, and we don't, you know, like, what is a thing that we could do to celebrate and mark this? And we're going to figure that out. But ultimately, no matter what we do, it's not going to be collective, because the thing we can't do right now is really be in community, I think, the way that we all want to be. And that, like, I think part of us really needs is to feel connected to like our whole community, and not just like me and one individual student or even like a few of us, but really like, what does it look like to have 140 eighth graders and 60 staff members and another 500 family members in a building together celebrating? That's such a different experience than anything that I think we're going to try to approximate during this moment. And that's hard. Like, it's hard to know that young people who are going through this right now aren't going to have a moment that they really deserve, and a moment that I think we all need because of how hard things are around us.
Yeah, I don't know how much I can add to that. I agree completely. I think we're definitely, as a community, in a state of grief, of loss. I would say initially, when we started realizing that this pandemic was really going to get in the way of some of these milestones that our students deserve to celebrate together and with their families, we were kind of in a state of denial. I think, you know, we asked our students and our staff for some input on what they thought we should do, and the initial pushback was, let's just wait. Let's just try to do something in August or in October, or at a time when this might lift. And I think we were comfortable with that until we started realizing that even that might not be the case. So I think the plans that we've come up with, you know, we also went through the process of maybe doing some type of drive-through, or having small groups of students meet in 6 feet apart, all these things that would, in one way or another, feel impersonal and not lead to that sense of community as a whole school, that we're celebrating this milestone together. Like, everything was some type of compromise. So what we're doing now, like, it's the plan that we have now is to graduate all of us as a whole community online. The plan is to deliver to students their yearbooks and their diplomas and a cap and gown, and for everyone to piece together online to acknowledge each other, to celebrate what they've accomplished. And we're doing the best that we can with it, but we're still hoping that we can find a way to be together, whether it's in October, December, at some other point, because I agree with what Neema was saying. Like, I think this is one of those experiences that we do need to go through as a community, and to celebrate as a community for our kids, and also for their families. I mean, who was it that mentioned? I'm sorry, the 8th grade in the McCormick. I should look up your name. My apologies. But you mentioned, Shalika, you mentioned how you saw your older brother graduate from high school, and how that was meaningful, impactful for you. And I've been at now many high school graduations, and I see families, I see young people, I see older family members just being so proud and gaining so much from that celebration that they experience together as a community. And our kids all kids deserve that. So even though what we're coming up with now is, I think, the best solution we have at this point, it's not enough. So we're going to continue to try to find a way to get together. And maybe I'm just, wishing on something that might not happen, but we're going to continue working towards that. It hurts.
Thank you, Neema, and thank you, Antonio. You guys brought up some really, really wonderful and really important points, whether it is about the layers of grief and all of its many forms, the way it's touching our community, the denial I think many of us felt and many people are still actively going through right now. And thinking about all those different ideas, I'm going to shift gears a little bit towards the youth and kind of ask you guys if you can put yourselves a bit, as hard as that is to ask you to do that, put yourselves a bit and sort of imagine what you think post-pandemic life would look like, as well as post-high school, and in Shalika's case, post-middle school. And I guess maybe what you hope for life afterwards, or what you really think it's going to be like, your perspective on that. I would like maybe for one of you guys to just come out and talk yourselves. I could call on someone again. It depends on whatever you guys feel comfortable with.
I'll speak. I think it's gonna be very different. Even like just going like to a restaurant, they're probably gonna have like less seating, or just going to the park, there's probably gonna be like less like of a limit, or like beaches, like everything's gonna be really different. But also like going on to college is also gonna be very different. We might keep going on like onto online work, which is gonna be very difficult. So yeah.
Thank you, Daniela. And that's very true. Life is going to be extremely different, maybe even a little bit more than what it is now. Anyone else want to pick it up, or? Okay, I'll just call in Shalika.
I'm sorry, what was the question again?
No worries. Okay, so the question was basically kind of asking you guys to put yourself in a position where you imagine what post-pandemic life would look like, as well as, in your case, what post-middle school life would look like, kind of thinking about what you hope for, as well as what you really think is going to happen.
Oh, I really hoped that that we would actually go back to school on the 27th, but they changed it to the 4th. I was like, okay, I could deal with 2 more weeks than the 4th. And then they closed it completely. So I was really hoping we would go back to school and just things would be the way they were before. But in reality, we're just inside trying to do work. And to be honest, I feel like a lot of kids are really, not only me, is like really struggling with this. So it's like people are trying to like balance out their life and trying to find new ways to adapt to this new type of environment, like masks and everything. So I feel like it's very new to a lot of people, and what people hope for isn't what they're getting.
You brought up some really, really good points, Shalika, about adaptation and how difficult that is during that time. I think we're all trying to find ways to adapt to this new way of living and figure it out. I'll move it over to Leonnardo.
For me, post-pandemic, I'm not even sure what that really is going to look like, especially like, for example, like internships and jobs and things like that. Students like plan on getting like paid internships and things like that, and getting jobs for during the school time and things like that. But after like business got hit hard, so allowing like kids to go back into like internships and jobs, I don't think that's going to go back as soon as the pandemic is over, because they need to like financially recover from what happened. I think that's going to look very different. One thing I do think may happen after the pandemic is that people realize their like friendships and like their families and things like that now that they had more time with them, because I think people forget about those little things.
I definitely agree with you on all of those different points. I think even looking at myself, I'm not a senior, I'm a junior, but next year we have different things lined up, also internships, things to that effect, that are such an integral part to what, life at my school at Fenway is like. And honestly, none of us really just see that happening. So even the juniors who say things like, oh, at least that's not us, for those who are, cruel enough to say stuff like that, we might possibly, hopefully not be in the senior shoes again. And I'm going to move this over to Katerine.
Well,
I agreed to what Leo was saying. He was talking about like internships, and I for my senior year, we were supposed to like have like a week, I think like a month of an internship for seniors, but like because of the pandemic, we weren't able to follow up with that internship, and that was pretty sad. Because I really wanted to basically have the experience to have an internship during the summer also. But also I'm thinking about like how will be like life after the pandemic in my home country, because I feel like we have the resources in the United States. I mean, even though like it's not perfect, but like comparing to like countries like where I grew up is really different, and I feel like people there are really suffering more than I am right now. And I grew up there. I went to school, some middle school in my home country, and like I believe some of my classmates, they weren't able to continue with their with classes because they don't have internet, they don't have a computer, and like it makes me feel um like how would be my life if I was in my home country during this time. And like that's why I'm saying that I'm really grateful that I'm here. And like even though things are not perfect, I'm grateful with the few things that I have and the few resources that I can like such a computer. Like a computer is such like a big resource like in my home country, not every person has. And yes, that's something I always think about, like how people will live and will like go through this pandemic in my home country.
Thank you for bringing that up, Katerine. I think that that's another layer to this whole thing that we often forget. This is a worldwide pandemic. It's not just happening in the United States. And the way that it's affecting other countries is, crazy. I also have people who live in, whether it's DR or PR, where my family comes from. They're always, coming with new news, and you hear how different countries are handling different things. And even when this whole first thing was happening, we saw how, I believe it was Ecuador, right? I believe there was a couple countries that were like hit really hard. This same question, I'm also going to open that up to the adults, and I know that you guys are a little bit more open to starting off, so I don't think I have to call on anyone, but I'll throw that question out to you guys as well.
No, you mentioned, Alondra, you mentioned that that some of the kids in your class, for whatever reason, were saying that maybe at least they weren't the seniors. But one of the things that I realized is that seniors this year, for the most part, got to spend September through March together, and we don't know yet, like what this pandemic is going to bring to our community, or especially or to our schools, right? Like, what does it mean to go back to school if the coronavirus is still in our it's still hitting us in waves and harming people, and we find ourselves in a place where we do have to like socially distance and quarantine and isolate ourselves. So I actually don't know the answer to your question, other than to say that it's something that we have to be ready for. We have to stay flexible for, and it's going to lead to compromises like that might even be more challenging for your graduating class than it is for this current graduating class. And I know that sounds really cynical and negative, and I'm sorry for that, but I say it from a place of worry and from a place of concern, and from a place where I think we need to, as adults and as young people, as members of the same community, start planning for and getting ready for and make the most of a situation that where what is the highest priority is our health, but so is our learning and our social and our mental well-being. So that's a long-winded way of saying I don't know what it's going to be like, but I do know it's going to be hard, and we've learned a lot in these last few months, sometimes through the good and through the bad, but we've learned a lot, but it's going to continue, and we just need to continue to stay flexible and be creative and be ready to make the most of a situation that isn't, that's so negative.
Yeah, I think something I've been trying to think about a lot are like, what are the things that we value? And how do we get really clear about what we value as students and adults in schools, so that no matter what the learning environment is, like if we're 100% online, if we're some online and some in the school building, if we're totally back in the school building, but we're having to follow all these rules that are like everyone has to be 6 feet away from each other, and everyone has to wear a mask, and everyone has to wash their hands every hour, and like there's, you know, like lists that are going around on social media of like if we actually went back to school in September, like what that would have to look like. I think if we're not really clear about like what we value and what we believe, we could end up with like a learning and educational situation that doesn't feel good to anybody. If we just say, you know, we're just going to follow the CDC guidelines and, you know, make everybody wear a mask and put tape on the floor for where people can stand, but we haven't actually thought about, no, but what does school need to feel like? Like if kids don't feel safe and connected and valued in school, then like you're not going to learn. And so if what we're doing in school is policing your body and telling you to wash your hands all the time and cover your mask, wear your mask all the time, like I'm not actually sure that that is going to yield good learning. And so then the question for me becomes, well, is that what we should do? Or should we try to really get good at figuring out this virtual thing that isn't working? Well, I'll be honest, for me, like I don't feel like it's working great for my kids right now. I'm trying, but like now I have a whole summer to like think and get better and try new things. Like, should I just try to get better at this to make this work as well as it can? Or should I be thinking about some kind of blended model? But what's hard for me right now is I feel like that's not the conversation people are having. People aren't having a conversation about values. And most importantly, people aren't asking kids, like, what do you need? And you all could tell me the answer to that question. If I said to you right now, look, here's what we know. We know that social distancing is going to continue, right? We know that if you're back in school, like there are going to be all these rules. Like what makes the most sense to you? What do you think is the best way for us to go forward with learning? I think young people could tell us. And I think you could tell us in really clear ways, like, here's what would work for us. Here's what would not feel good and would not work. But what alarms me is like in all the conversations that I'm seeing and like all the reopening task forces that are happening, you're not there. And I really struggle with that. Like, I think if our post-pandemic reality is a plan that doesn't have you all at the center of it, and you all being the ones telling us like what you need school to be like for you, it's not going to work. And so that to me just feels like the big failing right now of how all these decisions are getting made.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I agree with Neema. We still don't have a lot of answers, but we have been kind of like going back and forth as far as how are the young people going to be socially distanced in a classroom, measuring the rooms to see how many people can be in there at one time, going into a hybrid model that maybe the classes that have to be in a physical space, that they would happen maybe twice or 3 times a week, with twice a week, online learning, so that it doesn't overcrowd the schools or the spaces that we're in. Me, I'm in youth workforce, so I manage a series of different programs for young people ages 14 to 25, 14 to 21 actually. And what we're doing right now in terms of giving them their summer job, we've been able to figure out virtual opportunities in terms of virtual internships with our program partners. We've also been able to develop models that are built around, we have a one-on-one, it's called a virtual PAL program. Basically, we pair, an older high schooler, maybe 15 and a half and up, with a school-age child to do online programming to keep the young people engaged somewhere outside of their academic learning that they have to do every week. It'll be just one-on-one, kind of like a peer-to-peer learning structure. We also have a performing arts program that is going to be ran virtually that we'll be able to pay the young people for. And we are also doing a restaurant support group by way of, we're definitely going to employ the young people with they have such vast knowledge of being able to do social media that we're helping those small restaurants market, the fact that they're open, that they have takeout, because a lot of these small restaurants don't have a social media or a web presence at all. They don't have a footprint. So we're going to try and help those small businesses by way of a marketing team that it's actually, I'm training them on that. So we figured out different ways to have young people still have some type of a summer job opportunity. It doesn't look, and in terms of going back to school, I do want to pose this question also, if I can, Alondra. to all the young people as far as their post-secondary plans. Are they going to college? Have you received any information from the school that you're going to as far as what that's going to look like? Because I know my son is going for aviation science at Bridgewater, and they've been really good about communicating, you know, kind of like the steps that they have in place. But yeah, just going back, it's almost psychologically damaging to go back into school and only have to be so separate. You know, you can't have that camaraderie that young people are used to. So if I can, Alondra, I just want to ask all the young people in the room if you know, what are their post-secondary plans after high school.
All right, I'm gonna call out Katerine.
Okay. I'm going to like foundation year at Northeastern University. Well, hopefully there will be classes physically, no online, because that will be a nightmare to me. I feel like college is a different experience and it's a different learning experience. And I feel like it'll be helpful to basically go to school, but not online, because I don't know, like it'll be hard to basically find the support or the resources when you can go there and talk with the professor, which is different. And also, like, I feel like the homework and the school material will also be different. I really don't know, like, they basically say like they will be having classes, the classes will not be online, but you don't know, like things can change. So yeah, that's what I had.
Leonnardo.
My post-secondary plans right now, over the summer, is to get my investments license so I can open up investments accounts for families for college funds and things like that. And then for the school year, I plan on attending the Year Up program while dual enrolling at RCC, getting my associates there, and then transferring to a 4-year school where I'll finish.
Daniela?
Yeah, so right now, the June 1st deadline is coming up, so I'm not so sure, but I think I'm gonna stick with going to Bunker Hill, getting my associates in an education concentration, and then moving on to UMass Boston.
Daniela, if I can just interject real quick, UMass Boston has a lot of money. Actually, they'll give you a lot of financial aid if you happen to apply. I just know because my son also applied to UMass, and we got a little bit more money at UMass than we did at Bridgewater. But unfortunately, it doesn't have the program that he's looking for. But if you are looking into UMass, you know, they're giving more than they normally do because of this whole situation.
And just, you know, opening up this question a little bit to Neema and to Shalika, you know, and obviously Shalika's not going into college, but she's going into high school. And that in itself is a different milestone. And Neema, you are a middle school educator. So how does that middle school transition, you know, that middle school transition into high school, what does that look like, you know, for you guys? Or Shalika, what are you anticipating for your freshman year? And Neema, what are you anticipating for the incoming middle schoolers and for those that are leaving?
So I'm actually going to O'Brien High School, and I'm an athlete, and I do a lot of sports. So I'm looking to participate in a lot of sports and just try my best, because I know it's not my place to think about college now, but it's still in my head. So I'm gonna try my hardest to keep my grades up like it is now, all the way till 12th grade, so I can get into a good college like Harvard or something.
Yeah, and Shalika, I gotta shout her out. She is probably the person who has handled the transition to distance learning better than anybody else who I teach. She is incredibly mature and responsible and handling her business in a way that makes me really proud. I think that you all know the transition from middle school to high school is really hard. That 9th grade year, like a lot of kids experience like a drop off. And I like already before all of this, like I was always really anxious about the transition to high school. Antonio can tell you, like we talk about the kids who are going to MMA, who are like entering ninth grade, like we connect about them. I try to do that with the people who I know at every school in the city, to give people a heads up. I think the need for that feels like even more to me now, because like I have some students who haven't really been thriving in this online environment. And so the idea that like you stop going to physical school on March 17th, and then in September you're going to start high school, but you might be remote, and you might be with people who don't know you and don't have your phone number and don't have relationships with you and don't know where you live and can't track you down, makes me very worried. Ninth grade is already hard. We already lose lots of kids in this transition. They may not officially leave school at the transition, but if you don't make a smooth transition, it can make the rest of high school a lot harder. And so like I've been trying to think really hard about like, what do I need to do to communicate to like all the schools I'm sending kids to? Like, what does it look like for us to communicate clearly? Like, here's the best phone number to use. Text works really well versus messaging in Google Classroom works better versus email works best. Like there's all this stuff that we've been learning about what communication mechanisms work best for every kid, and they're different for every kid. Shalika, email works a lot better than anything else. I have another kid who, if I email them, they have no idea where in their email that message was, right? Like how do I get that information to the receiving teachers to make sure that kids have a really smooth or as smooth a transition as possible? And then the flip of that is like, I'm going to receive new kids who I don't have relationships with. Like I've been lucky, like the young people who when we went remote, like I'd had kids for 7 months at that point. We had relationships. When I'm like sending you a message being like, what happened to your work from Friday? You know who I am and you know my personality and you know this is Miss Avashia. She's aggravating. She's not going to let it go. Like she didn't let it go when we were in person. She's not going to let it go now either. She loves me and she's going to push me. But with a new group of students who I haven't established that relationship with, I'm not sure what that looks like. Because with all learning, like you start by building the relationships and the learning comes through the relationship. And so I think that it's a big question we have to think about as a school system and as a country, which is like, how are we going to build relationships remotely? Or like, what do we need to do to make it so that relationship building is easier? Because right now I have 80 students and I know them. And so it's been, at least I've had that I know them. But I'm going to get 80 new students in September who I don't know. And I'm going to be trying to figure out how to build relationships with them and teach them at the same time. And they're going to be on a computer screen. And I think that is, that's a really daunting task. I think we have to figure out how to prioritize the relationships first. And I'm not totally sure I know what that looks like yet, but it's something I've been thinking about a lot. And I think we all need to be thinking about it.
Thank you, guys. There was something that Neema said earlier that it sort of prompted a question for me, specifically for Dr. Gayl, but then I wanted to open it up to the youth. You mentioned something about the CDC guidelines and all these different things and how that would affect the students. And it sort of had me thinking, how do you think, Dr. Gayl, how that would affect the students, you know, from a mental, emotional perspective, and then opening it up to the students, how you guys think that will affect those of you transitioning into college and then Shalika transitioning into high school?
So that's an excellent question. And one of the things, the challenges is that there's so much uncertainties that no one really knows what to do, how to do it. And, you know, we are thinking primarily about the external factors that go into what it means to transition back to school. And so many of us is not thinking about what the internal challenges are. I was just reading recently that the incidences of traumatic thoughts, feelings, experiences for not just young people, but for everyone, but for young people is going to increase even more. And if if we don't think about the transition in a holistic kind of way, then it's going to really impact what school is going to look like when, if and when they do transition back into the school building. And Neema made an excellent point in terms of the importance of looking at, you know, how is this going to affect the children in terms of their mental health? Because we're looking at, you know, 6 feet apart, we're looking at wearing masks. And so what does all of that mean for the person internally, right? So it's really important for us as a collective to begin to think about how do we holistically transition children back into school and not look at it just in terms of the external pieces in regards to whether it's 6 feet, or, you know, if it's 6 feet away, what the spacing is going to look like, but also what that's going to feel like for the young people when they're in that space. What it's going to also feel like also for that teacher to having to, if you have an active teacher who walks around the classroom and likes to connect with his or her student, what is that going to do for that particular teacher to not be able to make the connection in that kind of way? So I think we really need to, it's hard to say, we can't put one above the other. We have to make it equally. And how do we collectively, holistically transition the children back into school? And I just want to also add to Neema's point in terms of, you know, what it's going to look like for these young people who are just moving into high school. Because again, like she said, that transition is so difficult for, you know, middle schoolers going into high school. And there's a whole developmental process that happens for young people. It's the same way maybe for a child who is leaving in a school that was from K to 5, and now they're going into middle school, and what that transition is going to be like for them. So again, when we have to really pay attention to developmentally what that means for young people when it's time to transition back into the school building, or if you're not transitioning back into the school building, how do you still take care of their mental health needs and also be able to provide them with the academics that they need in order for them to thrive? It's not, how do we not put people out there so that they're just surviving, but how do we help them thrive in this environment?
Thank you, Dr. Gayl. And now opening it up to that same question, how you guys think that this will affect your mental and emotional health. And I'll start off with Shalika, since you guys don't like starting first.
Me mentally, it's been kind of like challenging because like I don't really have kids my age in my house. You're either too old or too small for me to hang out with. So like I don't really like hang out like personally, like I could touch them, but I do text some of my friends. They keep me sometimes motivated, and they keep me you know, just like back to that old feeling where I could just still talk to them. So sorry about the noise in the background, but it's okay. It could be better, but it's okay.
Thanks, Shalika, and I definitely agree with you on that. My house is it goes from 25 to 8 years old. So there's, you know, I mean, we hang out, but it's definitely not the same. We try to make it work. But we will move on to Daniela.
Sorry, what's the question again?
It was basically how you think, you know, for yourself and as well as for other youth, how you guys think that, or how, you know, how the pandemic is affecting you now mentally and emotionally, but how you think that it will affect afterwards in the transition into whether it's college or in Shalika's case, high school.
I think it will affect me personally because I mean, it's kind of hard. When you're going to college, it's like a new experience, and like freshman year is always like so difficult. That's like kind of the year where you kind of make mistakes, but then you learn from those. But on top of those mistakes, there's also going to be probably, if we're doing like online, it's going to be really hard to contact like professors.
Thank you, Daniela. Katerine?
Yeah, I agree to what Daniela was saying about like that during freshman year in college there will be like a lot of mistakes and that like nobody's perfect and will basically it'll be harder like to stay focused and like because something I realized like during this pandemic is like living at home is really difficult because usually like we have siblings, we have family members, like we don't live alone, and it's hard to concentrate and you know but like, still it's something that like we gotta get used to because it's hard to live alone too. And yeah, as I was saying before, like basically like finding resources, um let's say starting college for instance and not being able to like to be there physically is really hard, but hopefully things will get better. And yeah, I'm staying positive.
Leonnardo?
For me, I think the transition is going to be a little difficult, knowing that there's still going to be like this gap from not having some of the traditional things that seniors usually have, like prom and graduation and things like that. So I feel like there's always going to be a little gap there, even with the things that we're going to be doing, because it's not exactly what we were going to do. So just missing out on that experience is going to be something that is going to make the transition a little difficult, because you never get to like really like end your high school like career type thing. You never get to say like goodbye to everybody or whatever the case may be. And like this transition from going to school and then online, it was difficult, being that there's a lot of distractions and things like that. And for me, I think if it weren't for like my school faculty like checking up on me, making sure I'm doing my work, I wouldn't have done it. And just those little things like that, like that the teachers and my programs and things like that check up on me, felt good. And I think that's helping me through my transition.
Thank you, guys. Moving on a little bit to a little bit of a different question, just considering the fact that all of these students that are represented here, as well as the educators, we attend inner city schools or work at inner city schools, and we live in underrepresented communities. And I kind of wanted to see, both the youth and as well as the adults, how you feel living in these communities. Sometimes you get counted out in certain discussions, whether it is when you read the CDC guidelines and they talk about desks being separated. And for example, my school has tables, we don't have desks. Something as minor as that, or other such rules where it almost feels like they're talking about a suburb school and not a very small inner city school with not that much resources. Whether it is we talk about the violence in the streets, looking many different layers. How do you guys feel that impacts our communities, and as well as how do you feel about it as a person, your personal feelings towards being counted out in some of these discussions when we think about the pandemic and all of the different layers that it has? Anyone can start. And if I need to simplify the question, just let me know. I know it was a lot.
That's an awesome question. I'd love for the young people to go first, but I appreciate the question a lot.
I'm going to call one you guys out then. Katerine.
Sorry, what was the question?
Okay, so basically, all the different people that are the students that are here, as well as the educators, we live in underrepresented communities, and I basically wanted to hear you, the youth as well as the adults, how you feel that being counted out of some of these conversations, how it impacts our communities, and as well as how you feel about it as a person.
Okay. Feel like it's good to like basically talk about it, because you don't talk about it like how people are supposed to know like for the things that you're going through, because I feel like I'm not the only one that's going through like these experiences. I know that there's other people who are going through this the same experiences, and that's why it's good to talk about it. to basically reflect on it, because you can find like common things that are happening to others, and like without finding those connections can basically you can create your own group and like start like thinking about like, oh, you know, like these are common issues, these are common things that are happening, and like I'm not alone in this experience or circumstances. So I feel like is basically a good strategy to like start I'm sorry. So yeah, it's good to basically talk about it so you can find things in common with other people, and especially with underrepresented communities that we know, like even though like we struggle, like no other we struggle a lot, even though these issues are continue to be with our community, is 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 good to communicate this with other people.
I agree. Thank you for that, Katerine. Communication is definitely key during a time like this, and just in general. I know that I think, Neema, you have a response. So I don't know if any other youth wants to pick that question up first before we go to Neema. Any of you at all? Neema, we can just start with you, and then we'll move on to the youth again, or I don't know. I don't want to call you guys out.
I want the young people to be at the center. So if there are young people who want to say something, I think it's important that they say it.
I'll say something. So being from the East Boston community, I think that's something that I'm really passionate about. Is I go outside and I see people, like more than 20 people gathered, all in like a small space, like all sitting down in benches. And then we have like the bridge that's connecting us to Chelsea, and there's so many injustices here. There's so many buses that are still passing, and it's so tempting to, you know, go out because there's buses there and they're free. And it's like really affecting us as a community, the, you know, like minorities and people of color and immigrants. That's what's represented here in East Boston, also in Chelsea. Just seeing those who don't look like us making decisions for us is very, very concerning. Telling us, you know, open up doors, you know, it's fine, but you know, our health is also very important, because by us like living next to like the airport and seeing all these buses, that also affects our lungs, which if we have asthma and we also get the COVID-19, then that's also very important. So it's really crazy here.
You brought up some really good points, Daniela, and I thank you for that. And I think that that's something that we definitely need to think about when we talk about reopening. You know, I don't live in the suburbs, but I've been there, I visit, I have family there. It's a little bit easier to move around and socially distance than it is in a very packed, overcrowded city. And opening up doors is a very questionable decision. But maybe Leonnardo, if you have anything to add to this question.
I would just agree with what Katerine said about communication and things like that, because not a lot of people know what's going around, like going on around you and things like that, because things can be happening in your community that nobody knows about, and you don't really have anybody to talk to. And so I think it's important to have that somebody to talk about whatever the case may be, just to like help you vent, because you aren't supposed to like just keep things bottled in like that. Yeah, and I think just communication is important in general and things like that. Like around my community, still people are like going out on cookouts and things like that, and like I see groups of people hanging around outside and things like that, and it's just crazy. And like then there's also like that violence part of the like community that happened like the other day and things like that. So it's just a lot's going on, and not a lot of people know what's going on, so they don't know how to deal with the situation unless you talk about it.
Thank you, Leonnardo. And now opening that same question up to the adults.
I can say something. In terms of you know, underrepresented populations, I particularly have an interest and a passion to work with undocumented families, and I do have a couple of do have a couple of young people that are in high school that they are actually undocumented that I work with. And, I'm fortunate enough to be a friend of Julia, which she has been, her office has been very, very supportive in terms of being able to assist them. Some of the disparities that are happening, I mean, the EBT card, which is a pandemic card that that I think Katerine was talking about. Yeah, it does say clearly it doesn't matter what your status, what status you are, that they'll approve you. But one of my families try to apply for it, and if they're not in the country for a minimum of 5 years, they're ineligible. So what do you do when you basically, in a lot of these families, they used to work at restaurants, under the table, being a dishwasher, a busser, and a lot of those restaurants are shut down. So the first line of people that they're going to get rid of is definitely going to be, the disposable ones, basically. And that happens to be a lot of undocumented families that have no way of applying for any benefits, no way for applying for unemployment, no way for applying for, TANF or EBT or anything like that, because they don't have, they don't have these resources available to them as easily as we are. We're documented, but yeah, I want to definitely, I bring up that a lot actually with Julia, and Julia's been able to help these families by way of referring us to a pantry, or giving us a gift card that they can actually just use without the trepidation of not being documented. So definitely reaching out to your city councilors is important, especially in this case when it comes to undocumented families during a pandemic. It's really overly hard. It's 10 times as much more difficult for them to have access to food, to have access to any money at all. There's families that have children that still need diapers that the EBT card doesn't cover. So just thinking about those things and thinking about those families is important at this time. Thank you.
I just want to add to that quickly. I think it's true, and I think those are conversations that are not happening at the national level, but they always, I think it's the community that's always looking out for all members of our community. I can say that in our school, we do have a lot of families that are in need, and we take it and we organize ourselves and our community members, our staff members, and people from outside of our school to collect things like gift cards for food at Stop and Shop, or find ways to help our families with housing needs or rent needs. And I'm glad that we're doing that. And I think that's a kind of school that every school should be, that should want to support their families in that way. But it's asking a lot of schools. And I feel like solutions for or ways to support families that are in need, that can't just go out and get an EBTP card. EBTP card. Or go for unemployment, those are families that are parts of our communities, that are integral parts of our communities, that need to be supported during this time, and we just need to keep on pushing our leadership beyond our community, beyond our city, to step up. And I wanted to respond, Neema, I hope you don't mind. You shared, Alondra, you asked how do we feel about as members of underrepresented communities being excluded maybe in the conversations around solutions or ways of dealing with COVID-19. So my mom has been in the hospital for 8 weeks. My mom had to continue to work. She lives with me, I take care of her, but she also does a lot to take care of my sister and my nephew and other people in my family. So she felt this need to work, and she had to work to support her family. I think it's a privilege that a lot of people have, that I see in the news all the time, how to set up your Zoom background, how to help your students, in your free time with how to help your children during your free time with their schoolwork. And that's the narrative that everyone is discussing, and it's excluding people that are important parts of our economy, important of our community, like just loved ones, whose needs need to be addressed when we're coming up with these solutions, and who just can't be forced out into the workforce because they are in danger. So how do I feel about it? I feel like it's racist, right? And it's racist, and it's something that it needs to be part of the conversation. It is part of the conversation now, so I do appreciate you asking that question, and it needs to continue to stay in that conversation and narrative.
Yeah, just to say one thing there too. I mean, I think it's important to name, the last 2 days in the Boston Globe, there have been articles calling kids in the Boston public schools saying that there are 10,000 virtual dropouts in the Boston public schools. And for me, like, that is such a racist thing to say. I think the word dropout is coded racism already, because I don't think kids drop out. I think kids get pushed out. But I think this like blaming that is happening when like the number of high school students in our city who are essential workers, like I go to El Platanero, you know who's working at El Platanero? High school students. They're not virtual dropouts. They are people who are trying to figure out how to support their families and how to hold things together in a time when many times their parents are being laid off, and yet they're the one who's able to keep working. Like, that is not a virtual dropout. That is somebody who's trying the best they can. And the lack of empathy and understanding and recognition of like what young people in our city are holding, and like all the challenges, the lack of empathy shown by sort of like some of the people in our media and some of the people in positions of leadership, to me, it just is really, really upsetting. I feel like there's a real disconnect between how people seem to be viewing the situation from the outside versus when you actually are talking to the young people who are in it, what their lived experience looks like. And to me, that is all about race. It is all about race and class, and there not being a connection between the people who are sort of driving the narrative and the people who are experiencing things in the day-to-day.
Thank you guys. Thank you guys a lot. I'm sitting back and I'm listening to everything and I'm processing it, and I'm definitely thinking about, different situations of people that I know as well as my own. And certain things that came to mind when we talked about even the whole concept of like virtual dropouts. I think that's like insane. But just thinking about also, I had like a SAT prep meeting with a teacher, and I know she was just trying to help, but I remember she was saying, I need you to understand that suburb kids are already ahead. And I looked at her and I'm like, dude, like I already had 3 people in my family friend group who just died. Like, I don't really want to talk about college right now, but you also don't want to disrespect, and I understand where she's coming from. I understand she wants to prepare, but it's just really difficult when you hear stuff like that, and there's still this fight, this competition. And it's like people forget that we're all going through this really difficult thing. But I know that Yhinny and Dr. Gayl still haven't, participated at all, or, haven't said anything to this specific question yet. So if either of you guys want to jump in and add on.
Yeah, in terms of like how I feel, I mean, it's kind of, it puts you in a position that you do feel that sometimes, we take things for granted. Another population we gotta, excuse me, think about is also, folks that work for themselves. My mom, she has a niñera, she has a daycare center that she's not getting any income at all during this time, because there wasn't anything put in place beforehand. And unfortunately, she's not eligible for unemployment because of, all this red tape and and all that. So we have to think about also people that have their own businesses, small businesses that they run from home or what have you, which is why it's so important. It's definitely in this time. And I'm going to switch gears a little bit, if you don't mind. I've been working with about 40 to 48 young people that fortunately Naesoj, she's one of my youth leaders, and we've been able to keep them engaged for about 80% of the time, and about 84% of them are participating at an 80% level 3 times a week. We meet with them. Fortunately, we've taken this week off, which is why some of the young people from MPDC are not on this call. But it's just being very mindful of bringing awareness to situations like that, because no one ever we're in a first world country, not even a third, but we never imagined that we were going to be in this predicament at this level. This is almost catastrophic. I mean, I was one of the skeptics back, March 11th was the last day I saw all my young people together, congregated. And I'm over here looking at pictures and I'm like, I can't believe this was like 2.5 months ago. They were all together having this great conversation about, Vision 2020. And I was a skeptic. I was like, this is only going to be a flu. It's like the H1N1 came about, then the bird flu, all these, but I never would have imagined that we would be here. And I think we didn't put stuff in place because we didn't know it was going to be at this level, and one of my hairdressers, actually, he just passed away 3 days ago from from COVID-19. And I was like, this is insane. Like one of the happiest people. It can affect anybody young. He was 32 years old, in great health. And at the beginning, a lot of our young people were saying, oh, if I catch it is okay because I'm young and I'm going to get over it. But we have to educate young people and say, it's not whether you catch it, it's whether you're bringing it back home to people that are much more vulnerable. So it's right now, since there was nothing in place, I think moving forward, my conviction would be just on awareness overall, on health awareness. And as Dr. Gayl has said, a holistic approach to be able to support them with, their mental state, support them with whatever, if we do come across any little grants that we can support, definitely food insecurity is a big thing right now because young people are eating all day, and some of their families, they go out and work, they come home, they don't have enough food because they're just eating all day. Because so food insecurity was a workshop that we actually did with the young people and talked to them about the food system. It's not only you going to the store and buying something, it's about the farmers that are behind that. It's about the purveyors, all these people that come from a system that if one is broken, it's just going to affect how much food you're going to get. So learning how to ration your meals and stuff. So right now I would say definitely awareness. It's key for me. Awareness and education. Thank
A lot was said, and I don't even know where to jump in. I think so many great points, but I just want to fall back on the issue of racism. We have like 3 isms happening all at the same time, several isms, but the ones that kind of stand out for me, Antonia mentioned it, and Neema did too as well. But we have is the racism, the classism, and the adultism, right? Because we have a lot of adults who are not taken into consideration that not because our young people are young that they may not have the experience that the adults have, that what they have to say and what they bring to the table is not as important as what everybody else brings to the table too as well. And then what we're really dealing with is an issue of structural racism and the fact that, when the COVID-19 hit this country, and how we approached it, how the people who are in power approached it, and as they approached it, they forgot the people who were in communities that didn't have the kind of resources that other communities had to as well. Now this COVID-19 is shedding light on a whole lot of different things, but I'm also concerned and scared that even though it's shedding light, they may not still do what they need to do in order to meet the needs of the undocumented folks who are, who have who don't have specific kinds of jobs that they can continue to work at from home, and the other things that we might need to put in place. So again, it's those things, the structural racism that is so embedded in this country that it trickles down to our educational system, it trickles down to our economy, it trickles down to our healthcare system. And that's why we really need to look at this from again, going back to a holistic perspective, because until we begin to do that, then people will continue to be left behind because no one wants to admit to the fact that racism is at the center of everything that's happening in this country here today. Racism is at the center of our mental health issues. Racism is at the center of our healthcare issues. Racism is at the center of our educational system. So when you look at it from that perspective, unless we break down and call it for what it is, and call people out on their racist beliefs, their views, their attitudes, then until that happens, and people are willing to and we may not even have to wait for them to say, yes, I can see this way. What do we need to do as a collective group of people to make sure that these changes happen, to make sure that our young people have a future that's not built on a country that started off as racist and continue to use racist views and beliefs and systems to keep people from advancing and being successful in this country.
Thank you, guys. We've had a lot of really great discussions. We touched on a lot of really wonderful points. Just, before we close out, I have one final question and sort of just asking for people's final thoughts. And a little bit, something that I definitely been thinking about, in my own time is when we talk about how we can get underrepresented communities as well as youth involved in some of these conversations. I guess, not only asking for final thoughts, but how you guys, both adults and youth, how you guys going forward, I guess intend maybe to, or ways, things, ideas that you can think of how we can get youth more involved in some of these discussions, whether it is how we're going to transition into school or whether it is violence going on and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we can start off with a youth or an adult, or I'll start off with a youth. We'll go with Daniela.
Yeah. So I think the way we can kind of communicate with other people was kind of hard right now because everything's like kind of virtual. But maybe just by taking care of ourselves, because by taking care of ourselves, we're also taking care of those around us. And I think that's really important.
Thank you, Daniela. And Katerine?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think that for me, like for instance, I feel like something that is very important to me is the fact like even though like my family, I have family members, like even my mom, that like didn't even like that basically went to school, but like a very like for a very like few time, like sorry, like for a very short time. That means a lot to me because like sometimes you're just not aware of the things that are happening, and I feel like starting at home and starting like basically educating your family, saying like these are the things that are happening, these are the things that we should care about. I feel like that could basically make an impact within a family, and and also family members that like basically sometimes they're confused, like, oh, like what is happening, what is this, like I don't understand. Like sometimes with my mom, because she doesn't know English that well, it's very hard for her, like, so sometimes when like she gets some papers in the mail, she's like, what is this, like what the things I need to do with this paper, and I'm like, oh, you need to do this and that. And then like I'm the person like who's basically trying to help her, trying to like teach her like how to do things, and like you know I'm trying to like to do my best with like educating my family and my mom.
Leonnardo?
So for me, it's kind of what Katerine said. What I've been doing is just educating my family on some of the things that they could be doing. Also, like helping with like finding resources online and things like that. And like a lot of my family members have been going to me to like fill out their like unemployment and things like that. So I've been doing that for most of my family members and like friends and things like that that needed it. And so I've just been passing down the knowledge so that other people can do it to their friends and families and things like that.
Thank you, guys. I don't know if any of the adults want to.
Hi, I'll chime in. Yeah, so in terms of having young people kind of talk about among themselves, hosting a forum among themselves, and maybe have a couple of adults kind of sit in the background a little bit, and definitely document what their thoughts are, what their concerns are, and be intentional about following up. I think a lot of times young people, adults get so boggled down with day-to-day stuff that sometimes we don't pay attention to, the importance of the young people's voices. So, definitely having conversations like this, that it's youth-led, that, have a couple of adults in the room just to, provide insight, but definitely have more youth-led conversations. And also think about, international students. One thing, I grew up just like Katerine, just like Leonnardo. I'm the translator. I'm the, we have another layer of work, especially when we have parents that don't speak the language, that we have to be a support system for, for our parents that don't speak the language, because they do have to go to work at a hospital cleaning beds all day, and they don't have the necessity to really know the language. So just being mindful of also international students. I also work with a couple of Ethiopian young people, and they also, that their religion brings on another, I'm not going to say a burden, but they also have a lot of other layers of responsibilities that along with being a young person, along with being international, along with, facing racism, discrimination, they also have responsibilities for their families to provide that additional support that a lot of, folks that are, Americans that live here don't quite have to do. And I'm still translating, and I'm still taking them to the doctor's appointments. Just be mindful of also another population. Thank you.
I think one thing that it's really important for you all to know and own about yourselves is you are the experts. The last time there was a pandemic was 1918. Maybe there are a few 102-year-olds alive right now who were born in 1918, but by and large, no one else in America besides young people has actually been in schools during a pandemic or knows what it's like to do what you're doing right now. Which means any adult who's telling you they know better than you do is full of it, because they don't, because they haven't lived through it. And so the important thing to know about that is you are the experts. So own it. Own that you're the experts, and be loud about being the experts, and be loud about asking that you are at the table for all the decisions, because nobody else knows better than you do what is working about this and what is not working about this. And as an adult, I feel like my responsibility is to figure out how to create as many spaces and opportunities for you to sort of drive with your expertise. But I also think I think you don't need me in some ways. I think that you just have to own your power and recognize that no grown up alive right now knows more about this than you do.
That's right.
And I just want to add to that. I think Neema made an excellent point as well, or in terms of owning your power. But I also want to add that you do need the adults, because the adults are the ones who have the financial resources to back you. Because you don't have those financial resources, then we as the adult, it's our responsibility to find those resources and make sure we support you with whatever you bring to the table because of your expertise. So yes, we do need each other, but our role and our responsibility as the adult is to find those resources in whatever way we can find those resources to make sure we support you in what you need in order to be successful.
Thank you guys so much. Has everybody spoken? Yeah. Okay, well, so we're cutting towards the end. So as always, we kind of just want to go around, but instead of doing one piece of advice, I think we're going to do one word about how you're feeling leaving this space. And so I guess we can start with Neema, and then we'll just go around like that.
I feel inspired by you all.
Thank you so much. Jeannie?
I'm feeling hopeful after today's conversation, and hopeful.
Leonnardo?
I'm not sure how to put it in one word, but I learned a lot.
Thank you, Daniela.
Grateful.
Antonio.
Well, inspired and hopeful we're taking. You know what? Hopeful. Sorry.
Katerine.
Thankful.
Dr. Gayl, on mute.
I said thankful.
Oh, no, not you, Katerine. I was talking about
Responsible. I feel a level of responsibility.
Thank you, Alondra.
Motivated.
Thank you guys so much. I know I was kind of in and out, but I would just say definitely proactive about how everything's happening. I want to thank you guys so much for being here and being vulnerable while in the process. I don't think you guys really understand how much it means to us in the audience just to see powerful youth voices like you, and then the adults in the space definitely giving youth the platform to say the stuff that they say and do the stuff that you do, and it really makes a big difference. So counselor, I want to come to you if you have anything to say before we close out.
No, I feel grateful and a sense of responsibility, and completely grateful for the platform that you continue to lead, Naesoj, and now Alondra and Dr. Gayl, in creating this space for young people to be real and being honest and vulnerable. And so I know I can't say one word, but I love you all, and I'm so grateful to be in this space, and it gives people who are listening an opportunity to hear directly from those who are living the realities, because like Ms. Neema said, you all are the experts, and we should be taking our lead from those who are living it. So thank you for bringing all of yourselves into this space, and looking forward to building alongside you all. I love you all, and congratulations on your graduation. Yes. Now I'm gonna take a screenshot. Do you guys know how to do the screenshot on the, I'm still learning how to do it. I think it's,
you have I think it's Command C4. No, that's not it.
It's Command Shift.
Command Shift 4.
Okay, ready? Nope, that's not it.
You have a Mac?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Shift Command 4. Hang on. Yeah, Shift Command 4.
No, I think she's.
I just can't. I'm gonna do the bootleg way. I still have yet to master that. Wait.
I'll take one. Hold on. I'll take one. All right. Smile.
This is history. We're making history. This is history. We're documenting this amazing journey. And so we're the survivors, right? We're surviving this situation. So these will be stories that you will tell for a long time.
There are so many people congratulating you guys too. Judine, Dabel, and Peter Lynn Marcus said congratulations and thank you. It's a great hearing from the youth. That's from the Facebook comments.
And so we'll be sending the winner of the gift card, the $50 pay bill situation. Someone from our team will be getting back to the winner. I wish I was Daddy Warbucks, because everybody would have wanted on this particular situation, but we've got a little budget, so it's got to be done in a way that is fair. But so you'll be hearing from us. And thank you to the adults for participating. We love you all. Have a beautiful evening, and stay well. Stay safe. Bye. Thank you.